towards the end when we looked at the end of chapter 5 when Joshua came face to face with what was Jesus. And Pastor had mentioned that, that like my Bible where it said, let's say my Lord unto his servant, that Lord should have been a capital L. I looked into it because, one way that I was raised in church, I was raised in that, if you have a King James Version Schofield Bible, that means there's no errors at all in it. And so, that's what I've used for years. And anyway, so I just wanted to say that I looked it up, and that, unfortunately, is one big flaw of the Schofield. It's not capitalizing where it should be capitalized. So,
and in some translations, they also have a tendency to switch indefinite articles in a sentence.
Yeah.
And that can hamper the meaning also.
Right. Yep. But anyways, I just how can I put it? When it comes to the printing, okay, even when it is, okay, it's King James, okay, when it comes to the printing, who is printing it? Man and machine. So, in that, I guess what I have to say is, after all these years, I finally learned that even though this is the inspired Word of God, this particular one I hold in my hand was put on paper. We'll put it that way. What I'm seeing visually by man and machine. So
James capitalizes.
yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, I looked it up, and for some reason, that is one big thing with the Schofield, is that a lot of things are not capitalized.
I think any King James is small.
Oh, really? I was gonna say I didn't check any of my others.
I think
Anything else I have, but
I think Schofield's just the comments, not the
yeah.
text.
oh, okay.
I know that if you had been here when Charles and I first started coming back, if you were holding a Bible that Harold didn't like the translation of, you never got it back in your hands. Charles had a book, I had a Bible, and Harold didn't like it, so Charles never got it back. I got a replacement.
Anyways, Joshua, tonight, what we are going to be looking at is Joshua chapter 6. Joshua chapter 6, we're going to be looking at the Jericho conquest. When the Jericho defeat, the Jericho, you can't call it a battle. There was no battle. There was a lot of men involved on the Israelite side of things, but there was certainly no battle. But I will give you a little info. I have something scary to tell you guys. Okay? Don't go running when I say this. There are others out there who think the same way I think. The big difference? They're a lot smarter than me. So it's, anyways, and you'll find out what I mean in a little bit when it comes to that. So what we're going to be looking at is Joshua chapter 6 tonight. Joshua chapter 6. Let's start right out reading right in verse 1. Now Jericho was straitly shut up because of the children of Israel. None went out, and none came in. And the Lord said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of valor. And ye shall encompass the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns. And the 7th day ye shall compass the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast of the ram's horn, when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, And the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him. I'm going to stop real quick there. So I want to tell you a little bit of something, a little bit of things here that in my study that I learned. So first of all, just, growing up in church and that, the picture, because of how fortified the walls are, or were, I should say, of Jericho, the picture I had in my head was this enormous city. To be honest, it was not. In relative terms, it was actually a very small city. However, their city was so important because of their strategic advantage where it was placed, okay? And in fact, the going off of, historical texts as far as census that were taken in that, the census before Jericho was defeated, there were only 106 men in the city. So that would be military-aged men. Okay, so in comparison, it kind of makes sense now once I see that. In fact, when it comes to... no, hold on, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. I'm not going to get ahead of myself here. So when you think about it, okay, at this point, now the Israelite nation is a lot smaller than it was when they were in the wilderness and from when Moses had originally done that census at the beginning of the 40 years, okay? At this point, though, they were still large. The Israelite nation was large, especially compared to Jericho. You're looking at about 40,000 Israelite men. 40,000 to 106 men. Okay, so it kind of makes sense that why these men, even putting aside everything they've heard about the Israelite nation and how God has delivered even armies larger than them into their hands, armies more powerful into their hands, and the crossing of the Red Sea, all of this sort of thing, even putting that aside, it makes sense as to why it was that they were scared. They were shaking in their boots, is what we had seen last week. And so the first thing we see right out in verse 1, now this was a very common practice, right in verse 1 where it says that Jericho was straitly shut up, none went out and none came in. That was very common, especially to a walled and gated city, when there was an impending war, an impending battle. And that was essentially for safety. What does that mean? Spies can't get in, or the other part is, if spies are in, they can't get out to go and give information out. Nothing can leak out as to what's going on inside those walls. So here you have where God says the Lord went to Joshua, and he says, first of all, that he has given Jericho, all the men of valor, the king, the whole city of Jericho has been given to him. It has been given to the Israelite nation. And God goes on to tell him and give him this extremely crazy and ridiculous thing to do. Okay? When you think about going to war, and the reason why I'm saying this is, remember, Joshua is a man of war. Okay? He's all about battle plans and such. So if there's going to be a battle here, you can only imagine the amount of things that are going through his head, battle plans, and what does God say to do? Walk around. And okay, this is another thing when it comes to the size of the city. I don't know how many in here are familiar with Fenway Park. And okay, so the block that it's in, it's basically just Fenway Park and the MGM Music Hall or whatever. Okay, that's all that's in that block. That city block is bigger than the city of Jericho was. Okay, that is how small the city of Jericho was, just shy of a half mile in circumference. That's it, okay? It was a little less than a half mile, whereas it's just over a half mile, that city block that Fenway Park is on, okay? So we're talking about something that even if you are just at a typical, I'll call it slow march, okay? Not a fast walk, just a march, okay? You're looking at, it would take roughly 15 minutes, probably, to march around the city of Jericho, okay? So here, God goes and tells Joshua, you need to go out now there will be 7 priests that will go before the Ark of the Covenant with ram's horns, trumpets, okay? But they are to march along with these men. I got to try to do a rough estimate. I mean, if I was one of the soldiers, people, anyone that was up on that wall of Jericho, just seeing how small my city was behind me, looking out, it would have been approximately 60 men across, that could wrap all the way around the city. Like if the last man and the first man, so the last man of the last row of men for the end of the procession, if the first ones, those first ones were meeting up with them, it would be 60 men deep, going the whole way around. Imagine how terrifying. Okay, that in itself must have been. So anyways, you have all these men, and one other thing that was, what verse is it? Verse 10. This is when he is giving the commands and telling the people what to do. And Joshua had commanded the people, saying, Ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I bid you shout, then ye shall shout, or then shall ye shout. Okay, so those first 6 days, they are to march around totally silent. Not a single word out of any of those men's mouth. Nothing. First day, I'm sure the people in the city were terrified. But it's possible that by day 6, they were just like, these guys are mental. Looking down at all these soldiers, we've got a major wall here, major fortification, and I'm not going to go into the details of that. I was looking at it, it was incredible.
They could actually do chariot races.
Yeah.
On the wall.
Yes, and the way that it was built too, there were the outside wall was built. I can't remember what it's called, but it was built. I'm sorry, with kind of almost an outward angle, so that way, even those people that are very skilled in rock climbing could not climb it. There was no way to get up and over the wall because of that outward angle. And it was, but so anyways, by the time you get to day 6, I'm sure they're thinking, what is the purpose of this? You know, in one sense, they're thinking, these guys have got to be crazy, but also, in the other sense, it might be driving them crazy. What are they doing? Why are they holding off on this? You know, we, as far as our military goes, we are no match for them. What is happening? What is going on here? And then on the 7th day, there was a big difference on the seventh day. So all these, the first 6 days, about a 15, they went out for a 15-minute walk, 15-minute march. I bet Charles would have loved to have only had to deal with 15-minute walks and 15-minute marches when he was in the military. But that's all they had to do for the first 6 days. On the seventh day, they were to march around 7 times. So you're looking at just shy of probably 2 hours of marching. And so even still, I'm sure on that first pass around, the people in Jericho, what's going on? Oh, they're going through this time. 2 times, and 3 times, 4 times. Well, if you guys are planning on doing anything, you might want to pick up a little speed here. You know, what is going on here? They get around the 7th time. And once they make it back around, we'll use I'll use the main gate, okay, as an illustration for you. The main gate of the city. Say that's where they started, and that's where they ended. Once those priests that went before the Ark of the Covenant with their ram's horns, trumpets, once they reached that front gate again, after that 7th time around, they were to blow on those trumpets. However, one other thing. All 40,000 soldiers were then to shout, it says. Let's see. And it came, verse 15, and it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day and compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times. And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priests blew with the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. Excuse me. And so this shout, okay, this is where I say there are other people that kind of think like me, okay? Except they're a lot smarter than me, as in they can come up with a little bit more of an answer than I could, okay? It's how much of this, was this, how could I put it? I don't want to diminish from God by saying this, okay, but was there anything to do with these men, with the Israelites and what they did that had to do with the falling down of the walls of the city? Or was it 100% God? Okay? So, I will tell you, one guy who went and came up with that same question that I had. One thing was he knows how to figure out and all of that sort of thing. And he figured out that the frequency, the noise frequency that would come from 40,000 men just shouting all at one time. Not just shouting, okay? These men compass, they're all around the city all at once. They're not on one side. They're around the whole city, so essentially they're all shouting into one center. They were shouting at the right frequency to make rock crumble. However, one problem. Even 40,000 men cannot get the volume that was needed. Okay? So, those 40,000 men had the right frequency. All God did was turn up their volume. That's what this, he's a Christian, he's a geologist. He knows everything about rocks and that sort of thing. And going off of the type, because each rock, I guess, has a different frequency, yada, yada. In that area, he actually took soil and rock samples and all of that, figured it all out. And he said, he's like, God in his infinite wisdom knew the men can make the noise, I just need to turn it up. But can you just, that's just, mind-boggling for me, is when thinking about that. Don't take it wrong. Like I said, I'm not trying to draw from God at all, because without God turning up that volume knob, okay, it wouldn't have happened. They may have been at the right frequency, but nowhere near the right decibels that would have been needed to go with it. Yes?
You also have to consider the fact that he knew exactly what the rock was made of.
Oh, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, because that would not, even with the right, or even with maximum volume, that frequency that 40,000 men, okay, would emit would not be the same frequency that would be needed for, say, granite, or, I know granite's a really hard stone. That's why I'm using that as an example, okay? So uses a totally different frequency. So yeah, thinking about it, okay, I'm not diminishing from God here at all. He made everything line up, but it's just so incredible that it was not just, God doing this, as he did before, with the parting of the Red Sea, parting of the Jordan. Technically, the people had nothing to do with it, okay? It was all God. In this sense, God used those men, used their natural voices being at the perfect frequency that was needed for that exact rock and the stone and dirt and everything that was made to build that enormous wall, and made sure there was enough men, say 60 or however many deep, all around the city at once. Just put it all together, and like the guy said, just turn up that volume knob. That's it. And it just, so much, it would have been worse than an earthquake. Because what will an earthquake do? With the ground moving, you may see things crumble and topple. This is not something you might see, like an earthquake mortar crumble, but the stone stays intact, right? This would have been, the stones were not staying intact. The stones would crumble. Okay, they would essentially turn they could go from a boulder down to little pieces. Okay, just in a significant, amazing thing. But in this whole conquest, what we're seeing, this crazy in human thinking, in this crazy plan that God came up with, we don't see Joshua question it once. We don't see him go, okay, God, yep, that's fine. 7th day, shout. Okay, what else? What else do we do? We gotta have a big battering ram or something, right? A couple of them to try and take down that front gate, right? No questioning God whatsoever. When God said that he would, that he was giving Jericho into his hand, he believed it. So as we go on here, in this conquest, we see, so we first looked at, what we just looked at was the march, and now the actual conquest is, let's see, so after the shout, okay, it was verse 17. And the city shall be accursed, even it and all that are therein. To the Lord only Rahab the harlot shall live, she and all that are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. And ye in any wise keep yourselves from a cursed thing, lest ye make yourselves a curse, when you take of the accursed thing, and make the camp of Israel a curse, and trouble it. Okay, so as they were to do this, they had 2 other commands, okay, that Joshua was giving to the men. After all of this, and you see what God has done, there are two things. When you go in to conquer, okay, you are to kill everyone and kill everything except for Rahab and her family, her household, and one other thing. Typically, when you go, when an army would go in and would conquer a city in the way that they are, where they are essentially wiping it off the map, okay, they would take the spoils. In this case, it's not allowed. It is not allowed. And one big picture here is that of the Christian and not wanting, holding on to, keeping things of the world. Okay? There is a, we're not going to get into it tonight, but there is a deeper meaning in that and why it was they were not to take of it. So essentially, everything God had cursed. Okay? Within those walls, everything, the people and everything was cursed. The silver, let's see, 19, but all the silver and gold and vessels of brass and iron are consecrated unto the Lord, and shall come into the treasury of the Lord. So, essentially, what it is that they were looking at, the soldiers, the Israelite soldiers, was either everything was cursed or everything was God's. Okay? It was either, everything there was one or the other. Either cursed or it was God's. Either way, they aren't to touch it. Okay? And it says that in verse 20, it talks about when the people shouted, when the priests blew the trumpets, and it came to pass, when the people heard the sound of the trumpet, and the people shouted with a great shout, that the wall fell down flat. See, that is one thing right there that always had me stumped until I learned this. What I just told you guys, the frequency and the shouting, what it would do to that rock. How could a wall so big, so wide, crumble to flat? You're going to have huge rocks and boulders you're going to climb around. Well, that's why. That shout, and God turning that up, turning their volume up to that, crumbled it essentially to dust, to dirt, to sand, essentially. So there was, it truly was down. There was no down flat. There was nothing left of it at all. I can only imagine what's going through the Jerichonians' minds when they're standing in there behind their great wall, and it just all of a sudden, basically turns to powder, turns to dust. Yes?
But wasn't Rahab's house in the wall?
So when it says,
Sections of the wall?
so when it says that it was in the wall was made up of essentially three parts, you could say. You had the main outer wall, and you had an inner wall, and then in between those two walls was there was areas that they utilized for certain things. And obviously, from what we can tell, and so we know of chariot races and such, and then her house as well. So, who knows? Maybe what God did is made sure that there was let's say, a gap in the men. Okay, the Israelite men, there's a gap. Why? Right there is Rahab's house. Right there is that scarlet thread hanging from the window. No men are to be lined up with right there. But what we do know is that, let's see, verse 21. It says at the end of verse 20, they took the city. Verse 21, they utterly destroyed all that was in the city, both man and woman, young and old, and ox and sheep and ass, with the edge of the sword. But Joshua had said unto the two men that had spied out the country, go into the harlot's house, and bring out thence the woman, and all that she hath, as ye swear unto her. And the young men that were spies went in and brought out Rahab, and her father, and her mother, and her brethren, and all that she had, and they brought out all her kindred, and left them without the camp of Israel. And they burnt the city with fire, and all that was therein, only the silver and the gold and the vessels of brass and of iron, they put into the treasury of the house of the Lord. And Joshua saved Rahab the harlot alive, and her father's household, and all that she had, and she dwelleth in Israel even unto this day, because she hid the messengers which Joshua sent to spy out Jericho. I'm going to stop right there. I want to. So we had in this whole Jericho conquest, we had the march, we had the conquest, but then what we are seeing in verse 25 is the most important part of all, and that is the saving of the lineage of Jesus. Why? Remember what we learned about. Who is Rahab's son? Son? Boaz. Yeah, Boaz. I was going to say, wait, do I mean grandson? And that's why everybody's giving me a questioning look. Son was Boaz. So Rahab was in the direct lineage of Jesus. If she had perished, that would have, in that sense, in the sense that we know it, would have ended the lineage that would lead up to Jesus. Okay, so we see the march, the conquest, and then the saving of that lineage. Let's see. You know what? I don't want to get halfway through or a little bit through the next chapter and have to cut it off. So instead, we're going to do something that never happens on Sunday night, at least when I'm speaking, and that's we're going to get out early. Yes?
Didn't you say they weren't supposed to save anything, so why did they save the grass? Is that they were supposed to?
They didn't save it for themselves. They
No.
gave it to the Lord.
Yeah, it was essentially an offering to God. It would be kept with the how can I put it? With the Levites in the temple treasury.
Yeah.
Those certain things were consecrated. In other words, they were set apart for God. Everything else was cursed, and we'll see next week what came of someone who saw some pretties and decided, it won't hurt anyone. No one will know.
Because they mentioned about, that people was saying stuff, saying they were going to sacrifice things to the Lord, but he didn't want that. So that's why I was questioning.
Okay, yeah, so, they were supposed to destroy everything except those things. Now, how it was determined, I'm not 100%. How it was determined. I don't know if they took literally, well, they couldn't have taken all of it. We'll see that next week. I don't know if they took only, say, certain things from maybe out of the king's palace, since those were the best of the best, and that's what was set aside for, it was consecrated, set aside for God, or whether they thought they were taking absolutely all of those certain things. I'm not sure how that came about as far as figuring out which ones, and I don't believe in the study of these chapters and another studying I did not come up with anything that mentioned it all as far as how it was chosen or that sort of thing. But yeah, it was to go into the treasury. It was an offering to God. I mean, I guess you could say going to the treasury in the sense of kind of as the church, we are to, as a decent portion, of what's given in the church does what? Keeps the doors open, upkeep and a lot of that other stuff. I mean, that's kind of what you'd be looking at that point too.
I think the key is in verse 18 where it goes, it says, "And you by all means abstain from the accursed things," where normally the army would take those cursed things.
Right.
But God had told them to abstain.
Yeah.
And then he goes and says, "However, the gold and the silver and the brass, that's mine."
Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It was everything in there was one or the other. You
That's
can't,
why in verse 19, and you have, but all the silver and gold and vessels of bronze and iron are consecrated to the Lord, and they shall come into the treasure of the Lord. Verse 19.
yeah, so, and that's where it, without getting into next week's too much, that is where this one man, his name was Achan, whatever. That's where he, in this case, he didn't just take of accursed things. He took from God, because a lot of the stuff you'll see he took were things that were consecrated. They were consecrated for God. Okay, so he, it wasn't just that he took of things that were cursed. He, in this case, actually took from God.
And he buried it and all of that too.
Well, yeah, tried to hide it. Yeah, tried to hide it. Yes, yes, that's next week, because there's a little bit more to it as well. But anyways, any other questions on the conquest? Yes, Mark.
I thought it was interesting that God didn't tell Joshua to take the priests and the ark with them around the city, but he took them. And I just thought it was interesting that, in a sense, God's presence was there with the army as they did their odd strategy.
Right. Yep.
To the city.
I mean, and that shows the faith, and that of Joshua, and shows not just his faith, but his desire, in the sense of, he didn't think for once that this had anything to do with him. Okay? And the battle strategies that he could come up with in his head, and the fact that Jericho's a small city and they had 40,000 men. No, he knew that no matter what, it was God. And we will also see next week in chapter 7, what happens when you don't have God on your side. Okay, because of sin. So we will see that as well. But yes, it's when looking at the man of Joshua and seeing that, that yes, he's just like, God's going with us. That was important to him, just as it should be with us. Not just on Sundays, not just to go to Bible study, not just to go to prayer meeting or whatever. Okay, it should be an everyday thing. And when I say taking God with us, obviously we can't truly leave God at home. Okay, the Holy Spirit is with us 24/7. Okay, but it's that thought process that we have, and treating it as if God is right there with us. In which case, how would we act? I remember as a kid, one thing is, what would your mom say, or what would your family do if one day there was a knock at your door, one of the little kids ran to the door and yelled back, "Mama, it's Jesus." What would the family do? Would they welcome him in instantly, or would they have to try and clean up real quick first? How you live your everyday life. Let's go ahead and close in prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much for your word, and Lord, thank you so much for this conquest of Jericho, what we're seeing, Lord, and the faith of Joshua and his continually wanting you present, no matter where they went. He understood that you were controlling everything, you were in charge. I mean, you took this good-sized army of men that still could probably do nothing against that wall, and you just used their voices to make rock crumble. And Lord, I just thank you for that amazing thing. And Lord, how that, maybe our voices won't be used one day to make rock crumble, but Lord, may we all have the prayer in our hearts, Lord, that you would use our voices to lead other people to you. Lord, they may not be able to make rock crumble, but Lord, they can do something vastly important when it comes to your house, your family, and when it comes to eternity. Lord, I just ask your blessing on these people and on the Bible studies and such this week. In Jesus' name, amen. Oh, and that's another praise, though, is I don't think that I have